Get ready to be inspired by the great things happening in rural education. The Rural Scoop will bring you new ideas and innovative solutions. We'll dive into education issues and we'll highlight what's working in your rural communities. You'll hear from a variety of educators, administrators, professionals, and others who will provide relevant and engaging content in each episode. And now, serving up the scoop, here's your host, Dr. Melissa Sadorf.
Well, welcome back to the Rural Scoop. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Sadorf, and today's conversation takes us deep into what it means to prepare students in rural communities for the future of work. And I don't mean just for jobs. I also mean for purpose and opportunity and belonging. My guest today is Joseph Sepp Sprietsma, Project Manager for College and Career Pathways at the Center for the Future of Arizona, where he leads the work across the southeast part of the state to connect education and industry and community in ways that really open doors for students. Sepp's background is as multifaceted as the region that he serves, from teaching and adult education to community development and university extension, to helping schools use data and partnerships and innovation and all the things to design career pathways that reflect local economies and the people that live there. So we're going to be talking about connecting STEM and career exploration, about what K-14 alignment really looks like in small towns, how rural schools can build economic partnerships that serve both the students and their communities, and what gives Sepp hope for the future of Arizona's rural workforce. So Sepp, welcome to the Rural Scoop. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Glad we were able to connect and find a time to get together, and happy to be here today. And thank you, for all that you do and all that the National Schools Association does for teachers and administrators and students and families and communities across Arizona.
Well, it is important work, and it is work that takes a team. So it's nice to be able to talk with you about the things that you're doing to make rural life in Arizona all that much better. So you've often said that the work for you is personal. And so can you talk to me about a defining moment or a mentor from your early years that shaped the kind of leader that you've become in this work in rural Arizona in the southeastern part of the state?
Sure. And 100% support that concept and approach, especially in rural Arizona, making, connections directly with teachers and students and school administrators, community members, is really the only way to work here. It's very, very difficult, if impossible, to do it purely virtually, or through email or through newsletters. People need to see you and connect with you and know who you are as a person, in order to build trust and develop, projects together. So it's part and parcel of my work every single day. I think I mentioned to you, I've been here in Cochise County for just under 30 years. I'm talking to you today from my home and my office right on the San Pedro River, in northern Cochise County. And I think you covered quite a few of the different areas that I've worked in, from community colleges to University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. I also had a big, long period of time as a probation officer here in Cochise County, working with youth and families, which is a very up close and personal work in homes and in communities and schools. And now the last 4 years working with the Center for the Future of Arizona as a regional project manager for the college career pathways, and really getting to work across the entire county. But I also get to happily work in Santa Cruz County, Graham, Greenlee, Gila, Pima, and then a couple of statewide projects. But my heart and time is really dedicated here in Cochise County.
Wow. That's amazing. And I appreciate where you're coming from, because I grew up going to elementary school in Palominas, Arizona, right there on the Mexico border, and graduated from Buena High School in Sierra Vista. Yes. So I know your stomping grounds, and it's a beautiful place to live and to work and to grow up, quite frankly. Yeah. What really drew you to the work that you're doing right now, and how did all of those early experiences that you just shared with us really shape the way that you think about connecting education and opportunity today?
It's been a very diverse path bringing me to where I am today. And in fact, I didn't actually go back to school until I was 50 or 51 to do my master's degree. I've always been a lifelong learner. I've been part of a project up in New Mexico at St. John's College called 𝐂𝐤𝐤𝐤, and I've always done classes here and there, but I kind of was just holding off, waiting for my kids to get a little bit older. And when my daughter started at the University of Arizona, I was like, okay, she's going to university. I'm going to go to university. And I started a program at NAU. And again, that was almost 6 years ago. But what led me to this work really is the very complex puzzle of working with students, parents, teachers, communities, school administrators, and federal, state, local government to try to put the puzzle together in collaboration with students and families. Because of the geography and the distances, you know this well between even Palominas and Sierra Vista, but then you look at Palominas and Wilcox and Bowie and San Simon, these are often, 2.5 hour drive distances. But all of those students and all of those communities, require and or should be guaranteed access to education. And so that's what kind of led me into this work is, always being hopeful and interested in finding ways to get access to rural students. I've been a very rural setting myself, but not in the United States. It was actually in Saudi Arabia, but very distant places and very much of that rural DNA of like, how do you figure this out without resources nearby? And so when my wife and I moved here almost 30 years ago now, it immediately dawned on me that there's just so much potential in Cochise County and other rural communities around me. Because going back to the question that you sent me that I filled in, talked about a little bit, is that students in rural communities and their parents and their teachers and their administrators are in a situation where sometimes they just have to figure it out. They don't have, multiple nonprofits or education associations or even financial resources. And so it becomes this day-to-day, shoulder shrug. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but let's go figure it out. Yeah. And I am just absolutely attracted to that kind of grit and approach to life. And I think I even mentioned there's a concept that is near and dear to me about this called frugal innovation, and this idea of having to innovate with very little and coming up with kind of approaches that normally you might not think of, but because there's limited resources, you just start putting the puzzle together any way that you can.
Yeah. You've called yourself a bridge builder between systems, and when I look at the work that you're doing, I truly believe that that's a very good way to describe it. So what does that work look like, and what kinds of people or organizations are you bringing together?
Yeah, no, great question, because that is the bread and butter of my work. Even today, I was in an all-staff meeting on Zoom with the entire staff from the Center for the Future of Arizona, and we were doing shout-outs to each other and to projects that are going on around the state. And mine today was not, I love my teammates and I love my leadership, and it's a great organization to work for. But my shout-out today was for Barb Lang, who happens to be the director of Cochise County Health and Social Services, and such an essential partner for me and everything healthcare workforce, from K-12 to the rural nonprofit hospitals, to Sierra Vista Regional Hospital, to Chiricahua. Barb, without her support and without her interaction and desire, much of the work I've done in the last 2 years wouldn't have happened. So it's people like that are essential. I may come up with an idea, with some resources, with some data, with some structures, and then it's one moment, this little match ignition with a community partner that sets things off. And Barb is just one example. I could literally go through a list. I work closely with Ty White, who used to be a chemistry teacher at Wilcox. He has been an amazing partner and really allowing me to collaborate with him around a project called Space Settlement Design Competition, bringing students from rural Arizona. They would have probably never had this opportunity to Biosphere 2 and engaging and meeting with mentors from NASA, from the International Space Station, from the U of A, from Boeing, and literally having a 24 to 48 hour design competition where they are just immersed in aerospace engineering. And so without me having met Ty and Ty allowing me to be part of his universe, I would have never been able to bring in the resources that I have, whether it's curriculum or toolkits or resource hubs or connections with other partners like Benson Hospital or the Community Foundation of Southern Arizona. So I could literally go on, Dr. Sato, for a half hour listing people like Barb and Ty and Cal Manis and Rebecca. So my work is ultimately dependent on community champions that I get to meet and collaborate with.
Right. And I'm sure that those experiences working, whether it's with community health or the extension programs that they have or any of the other partners, they really influence the way that you think about career pathways. How does that show up in the conversations that you're having and in the initiatives that you put forward, those experiences working with those different programs?
Yeah, it is almost like an unknown roll of dice what's going to happen. I have an idea in the back of my head of how this might look or what could happen, but it is these kind of unexpected moments and collaborations that then new doors open that I could never picture. And again, I will get just another example is 𝐂𝐮𝐦𝐻𝐢𝐬𝐤, the community outreach person for Benson Hospital. He and I have been working together for about 4 years across the map, but focusing in on healthcare workforce, and especially in the communities of Benson, St. David, and Pomerine. And through those interactions and conversations, one day Jason said, what if we did a healthcare workforce summer camp? And I said, I don't know, but what do you think? And we brainstormed, and then we went and met with a woman that was much smarter than the both of us, Ashley Dickey, who's the head of human resources. And she took that little idea and ran with it. And now we're going into our third year of week-long healthcare workforce camps for middle school and high school students. The first year funded by my organization, CFA, with ESSER 3 funding. The second year, some funding from us, some from a foundation. This year, where our ESSER funds are used up, and it's completely being funded by the Community Foundation of Southern Arizona. Wow. So the ripple effects, I had no idea where these would go. And it is, again, because of partnerships with Benson Hospital, Jason, Ashley, the Community Foundation, and the schools. Like the schools absolutely trust Jason and the hospital and me as well. And so when this opportunity came up to get students signed up, almost instantaneously, the summer camps filled up to the max capacity.
Wow. That's fantastic. Sepp, when you think about your early career, and you've had a very diverse background, a lot of experiences, and so maybe pulling on your time with adult education or social justice, the work that you did there, what are the lessons that you're carrying into your leadership and your work today?
Yeah, I mean, you'll probably see this hashtag occasionally when I repost things on LinkedIn or other spots, but it's Together We Thrive. There is no leadership where you're on your own and making the final, solo decision. It all is an accumulation of conversation, collaboration, dialogue, mind mapping, resource sharing. And so that really is where I kind of arrive at that collaboration and working with others is the highest form of leadership that I can think of. And especially for me, when I walk away and it's not me, on the front of whatever the thing was, it is a student, a parent, a community member like Jason or Ashley or Ty or Dr. Clay. Dr. Jackie Clay is another really amazing partner I get to work with here. That in the end, the leadership is really successful when people aren't sure who led the project. That to me is just a sign of great success, because I can't quite explain how it leads to sustainability.
Right.
When there's one person, people will often think like, without that person, this project will not go on. But if you're not sure who led it and it was really a group effort, the sustainability is, well, I think we all did this. Let's make it happen again.
Yeah. Good point. Love that. I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about how you're connecting STEM and career. And one of the core initiatives that you lead through the Center for the Future of Arizona is around that K-14 pathway alignment, where you're helping students to see a line from middle school to high school and then on through college and career. So can you talk a little bit about what that alignment looks like in practice, especially in our rural communities?
Right. Thank you for asking that. So Arizona Pathways to Prosperity is the initiative that I support at the Center for the Future of Arizona. It's one of several major initiatives there. Just for reference, most people will think of CFA and think about the Arizona Progress Meters. CFA just had its 21st anniversary last year, and the Progress Meters is what really coalesced the people to bring that nonprofit into its current state. And there's great data there. I'm doing a little side note pitch that all of that data and the Progress Meters is free. It's available to the public. It's great for grant writing. It's great for SWOT analysis. It's great for community conversations. So have a look there. But our Pathways project that I've been working on really has 3 key levers, and they really are different if you're in an urban or rural setting. But the 3 levers that are constantly in my journal, in my notebook, and on my mind when I'm working with community partners are career exploration. So K through 12 with good supporting curriculum, whether it's ours or others, but literally starting in kindergarten, going all the way through high school and really into college. Then that next transition, early college programs of study, and that's why Cochise College is such an important partner for me here in Cochise County, as is the Cochise Technology District. That's our JTED. And so making sure that students have access to dual credit courses and really even specific goals of at least 12 college credits by the time they finish high school. And then the third lever, which is probably the most fun one to work in and to support, is work-based learning. And that can be tricky, as you can imagine, in rural communities. Because of distances and travel and industry. And I'll just say one really cool opportunity that's happened here in Cochise County and around the state through CFA was a partnership with an organization called the Work-Based Learning Alliance. And we've been able to offer hundreds of virtual paid internships for high school students all around the state. And it's just been a joy because the internships are with food banks, they're with hospitals, they're with cybersecurity companies, they're with colleges, with universities, with government partners. And it's just for me to see such a great opportunity for students to have that level of engagement with an industry partner, but also be able to earn money. It's pretty tricky in rural Arizona because, again, the distances for students to find paying jobs. And in some cases, this isn't just some extra money. It may be the money that buys their back to school clothes or books that they need, or maybe even help their family out. Like I said, those levers and those approaches are all a little bit different around Arizona. But that's how we approach the work, in this county and statewide.
One of the things I'm sure that's difficult, especially in rural communities, is that we don't always have a large employer base to link to. So how do you help schools create meaningful career exposure when there might not be a lot of local industry nearby?
Yeah, thank you. That's also always on our mind. I think I mentioned to you in our email exchange, I support and collaborate with an organization called PEAK, Professionals and Educators Across Cochise. It's a rural STEM ecosystem. There's maybe 2 others in Arizona, one up in the Verde Valley and the remnants of another ecosystem in Graham County, which is functioning, but maybe not just doing as much as they had been doing. So what PEAK does is leverages and brings together people from across all sectors. So when we have our PEAK Summit, we have one every year in the spring, had 3 of them so far, and this next spring will be our 4th. The participants and the people that we invite are from Sulphur Springs Electric Cooperative, Arizona G&T, Fort Huachuca, Black Star Orbital, an aerospace company, Cochise College, University of Arizona, Safeway, Johnson Mine, the K-12 districts, The superintendent's office, that's another great example. Dr. Clay's office has dedicated a person to be part of PEAK, Cynthia Myers, who's just an amazing community partner and collaborator. And because of that, we have instant access and lines of communication to pretty much every district and every school, every teacher and leader in the county because of Jackie's long-term work here. And so when we come together, it is that opportunity for teachers to be and school administrators and business partners to see each other outside of their normal silos, which you would think would happen more often in rural because, Johnny's dad is also, the electrician at SSVC, or, Maria's mother is an engineer at Arizona G&T. But there's something special that happens when they get to interact together for a day outside of their normal environments and begin to see the Venn diagrams and overlaps of career exploration, college career pathways, workforce development, internships, externships, hopefully in the future for high school students here, apprenticeship programs. But that's been a really helpful system or approach to break down barriers and get people talking.
You mentioned earlier that some of these internships are virtual, and I know that there's a tool called My Future AZ, which is helping students to explore career options earlier than just high school. Can you talk a little bit, Sepp, about how rural schools are using technology to connect career exploration with what's happening in their classrooms?
Yeah, well, for sure, My Future AZ has been a great platform and incredible partners. Again, I'm not just saying these people's names because they're on my mind, but they're really essential to the work that I do and the interchange that I have with school. That Jessica Howe and Amber Folkman with My Future AZ are very close partners, and we even present together sometimes at districts or at events so that people can see the overlap between My Future AZ and our curriculum. We have a free career exploration curriculum with a real STEMploration kind of aspect to it called Possible Futures. So that collaboration is one way. But another one, and this is settled a little bit. It was much more active about 2 years ago. I came across an opportunity with Chicanos por la Causa, and they had purchased hundreds of VR headsets that were able to use all around the county. And it wasn't just VR of like the San Diego Zoo or the International Space Station. They were VR headsets with applications on harness wiring at Boeing in Chandler, on building Apache helicopters, on what it's like to work inside of a clean room in a chip manufacturing plant. So that students, it's very hard to go from Benson or Palominas to go see these things. And yet in 1 second, they were seeing them in near real time in their classroom through VR. So I'm hoping we'll be able to do some more of that. And that project was a couple of years ago. And there always needs to be, updating of the applications, the new types of work that are out there. And one of the, I think, tricky parts with that, people think, oh, you got VR headsets, you drop them off, put them in the classroom, you're good to go. You need a technologist. You need somebody there to help the teacher, help the students. And so there were some good lessons there of how we could do that better and what kind of other resources we needed besides brand new headsets and great applications.
Such a good point. In your experience, what's been the best way for rural leaders to start a conversation with local employers that might not yet see themselves as partners in education?
There's a really exciting new initiative, just like very freshly launched, maybe in the last 2 weeks, formally last month, between Jackie Clay's office and an organization called Community Share with Josh Schachter. I've been interacting with Community Share on and off for almost 6 years, trying to find a way to get them to Cochise County. They are operating in Pima County, and they're doing other things actually all around the United States and internationally. But it is a really well-developed application where students, teachers, parents, business entities, industry partners can interface virtually. Normally, community share is kind of like an opportunity for a teacher to like, oh, I'm doing a class on NASA. I wonder if there is an astronaut or a NASA engineer in Tucson or the area that I could have come talk to my class. And they go, boop, 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 go on to community share. And sure enough, there's a retired astronaut or a retired NASA engineer in Tucson. And then they can come and speak to those students either live or via Zoom or another virtual, meeting app. So that's the way it normally works. I mean, it could also be gardens. It could be anything from STEM to art, you name it. This community share is a little bit different in that it's going to help connect students, teachers, and industry for internships. So that, and I think it will also still be able to support outreach to guest speakers for STEM and banking and all sorts of other things. But the concept that Jackie developed with her team and with Josh is that community share can be a virtual way for industry, government, business to be able to see and interact directly with students and teachers and schools to get that process going. Because again, Palominas to Sierra Vista to get to Safeway or to a small company, it's tricky. It's not as simple as it seems. There's no public transportation. There's not a bus or an Uber or there's maybe mom and dad have a car or your neighbor can get you there. So this new initiative I think is going to be really exciting here in Cochise County.
That's great. Yeah, I love how recently the framing around career pathways is not just around education and education work, but it truly has become a conversation around economic development. So can you talk a little bit about how schools can become active partners in strengthening their local workforce and communities and the benefit that has to the community as a whole?
Really great insight and question about that. Because of my work, I get to do a lot of different things. So like in a 1 or 2 week period, I might be at an economic development luncheon, and then I might also then be in a school doing some training on our possible futures curriculum. And then I might be at the community college talking about how to get students enrolled into dual credit courses, all within a 10-day period. I think this is one of the areas that I want to really work on in 2025 and 2026. When I go to the economic development luncheons, I'm always looking around. Are there superintendents? Are there principals and our teachers here? And generally not, because those luncheons usually happen during the weekday, and they're usually right in the middle of the day when everybody's in school. So I've been having conversations with some of the school districts, with the economic development partners, and these are like AREDF and Sierra Vista and SAEDG. I can put those in the chat for you of what they stand for, to find times and places that we could get educators, especially K-12, involved in that. But who I do see there that is the really important bridge is our Cochise Technology District and our Cochise College early college programs and our workforce programs. So Colin Scarborough is the Dean of Workforce, Brenda Kurtz, early college, and there's a team, Troy Thigerson and Katrina Jansen at the Cochise Technology District. So those individuals and organizations or programs are there, and they're there because of exactly the question you asked. They want to know what's happening in workforce and economic development in our county and how to align that to what's happening in the technology district, in the dual credit, in the pathways to college, in certificate programs, micro-credentials that the college might be offering. So I think there is really good traction, and this is happening. I just would love K-12 teachers to see it with their own eyes as well.
Yeah, and get involved with it too. They are part of the ecosystem that makes that work.
100%, yes.
Sepp, have you done any regional collaboration, like between counties or across the state, to strengthen career pathways for rural students?
We, coming up, it's been a very active time. I'm looking at my calendar here. Coming up in the very first week of November is the third statewide healthcare summit in Phoenix. That first one was 3 years ago. As about halfway through it, I was there and I thought, why are we doing this in Phoenix? How do we do it in Cochise County? And I think our leadership was hoping that the regional project managers, myself and 3 others would have that light bulb go on. So when that occurred, I immediately came back to Cochise County because I saw the power of that cross-sector collaboration. There were hospitals, insurance companies, universities, colleges, college students, all together in one room, recruiters, and it just sparked so much conversation and ideation and idea building. It struck me that I need to do this in the rural county. And that's where I think literally a month later, I met with Barb Lang for a cup of coffee. I shared with her what I had just seen, and she just said, let's do it. And so within a few months, we had launched the Cochise County Healthcare Workforce Community Forum series, and we're now in year 3. And it is a major coalition. All 3 nonprofit rural hospitals, Canyon Vista hospitals involved, 𝐄𝐩𝐤𝐬𝐬, Arizona Complete Health, but also at the state level, Department of Health Services. And so it was really great to see. And I think it was our second one. The group that we really wanted to present was able to come, and it was HOSA, the Douglas HOSA Club, which is part of their healthcare CTE program. And boy, did these kids show up. I mean, they had on the blazers and ties and slacks, and they presented like, people didn't know, like the hospitals and myself, I did not know how much they were doing in the community. They're doing blood drives. They're doing a binational, international bone marrow sampling program in Mexico and the United States to increase bone marrow donors. They're doing programs in their education outreach in the middle school. And what they were asking for, now 2 years ago, was more opportunity to engage with healthcare organizations in Cochise County. And a wonderful outcome story of this is I was in Douglas 1 week ago, and they are now signing a final document to have an internship with 𝐂𝐩𝐤𝐬𝐬 Community Health, 70 hours per year.
Oh, wow.
They can't do all of the students, but about 15 a year will participate. And it'll be across the spectrum of healthcare, business, finance, nursing, phlebotomy, transportation, so that they'll get a chance to see all of the aspects that 𝐂𝐩𝐤𝐬𝐬 does. And my hope, and I think, this is happening, through conversations, this will help those students and that school and myself find pathways like this at Copper Queen Hospital, Benson Hospital, Northern Cochise, maybe the health department, possibly Arizona Complete Health. And those students, by the time they graduate, they'll have, full resumes. They won't just have a high school diploma or a certificate, which is great. If they get a CNA certificate, they will have real world experience under their belt, and they will have a serious network with those community members that they've been doing the internships with. So it was really great to see that come together, and that's how it happened. And again, Barb Lang, it would not have happened without a director that was that engaged.
Yeah. I love that because it speaks to the power of programs like that, allowing students from rural schools to stay in their home community if they need and want to, and still have a living wage.
Yep. Yeah. And that's a constant discussion when we, luckily, because I have a close connection with the Center for the Future of Arizona and the progress meters, we were able to invite down Ian Dowdy, who runs all of our data. And he did some really remarkable data share-outs on high school graduation rates, transition to college, completion of college, career access. And like one of the things that we all knew, but not until we saw the graphs, Cochise County can never produce enough students. And if every single high school student went into healthcare, it wouldn't fill all of the positions that we need to fill across this county. There's just the numbers just aren't there. So it led us to feel like, well, let's continue to promote this with the high schools and middle schools, so building up interest in middle school. And it let us know, like, we have to recruit from outside the county. And so that wasn't as much work that I did, but Barb and some others did a lot of other really great work on recruitment and retention to bring people to Cochise County to work in healthcare.
Well, that makes me think, Sepp, when you look across Cochise County, or it could be Southern Arizona, actually it could be just Arizona, but When you look across Cochise County in particular, what are the biggest structural barriers that the schools in the county face when it comes to growing those strong college and career pathways for their students?
I think in terms of kind of policy, system, environmental change, and the structures are sometimes beyond Cochise County. And there's pieces happening here. Some of it, I think, are continued ripple effects from COVID. I notice still higher rates of absenteeism in students, which makes it difficult for them to make academic progress and, maintain a pathway towards high school graduation and college. I still see fairly high rates of turnover of teachers and school administrators. I think some of that is maybe from COVID ripple effects. Some of it is from state funding and Arizona policy around how, what teachers are paid, and really in rural Arizona, the economics. We're not a wealthy county. And so our tax base is fairly low. And so we don't have, the ability to offer really high wages for teachers and paraprofessionals and other educators. I do think, many superintendents find ways to work on that, maybe a reduced school week or, being part of a community. Like I've never taught in a large county or large city. I have taught here in Cochise County, and it is the rewarding sense that you get because you are part of that community. They're not just kids that come and go at 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. They're you end up playing soccer with them and shopping at Safeway with them. And it becomes, it is like Mayberry, the good version of the Andy Mayberry show. And so sometimes getting the word out about that can help with us, with those struggles of teacher retention.
Such a good point. And something that people, I think, overlook when they're considering rurality and maybe considering whether or not they want to move to a rural place or teach in a rural place is that that those multiplex relationships are present no matter where you go.
Exactly. And Pima County is beautiful, and there are small pockets and neighborhoods where you could have that experience. But when I'm talking to people about moving here or new teachers, I'm Chiricahua National Monument, the San Pedro. Beautiful. The most traveled bird riparian area, I think, in the world, as close to Costa Rica or above because of the bird migration. Archner Caverns, Cochise Straw, it just goes on and on, the areas that are of nature and beauty here. But also that life where, you are part of a community. You're part of something beyond just an 8 to 5 job.
For sure. Yeah. Speaking of policy, I think one of the things that is an opportunity around a rural community, especially if you're working within the school system in any way, you very quickly become an advocate because you get to tell the story of what is truly happening in those rural places. And if you could fix one policy or a funding gap that limits rural schools with expanding career pathways or anything else that you've noticed is an issue, what would that be? What would that policy be?
I'm not sure if it's a policy or a practice. I think it is that integration of education, career and technical education, post-secondary, industry, workforce, and economic development, that we can see those as fully interrelated. And that I just sense, and I see this all the time, when students see that what they're doing in school has direct meaning for what they want to do after school, whether it's going to college or university or into apprenticeship, their traction is tenfold. It's why I think actually CTE, and I'm sure people are getting, PhDs in this, CTE courses generally, really there's never student behavior issues in career and technical education because they're fully engaged, and sometimes engaged with dangerous machinery, welding equipment or science, but it's really they're engaged and they can see the outcome of the work. If they're doing math and they're measuring and they're doing calculations and even some algebra, it's not theoretical. it is completely applicable to what they're doing. The length of the wood, the angle of the cut, the depth of the welding, the material that they use for the car,
Right.
or even more in areas like computer science and computer information systems and cyber. They see right away, oh, this kind of error in my coding could lead to X, Y, and Z right away. And it makes sense, and it's real, and it's, tangible.
If there was a rural principal or a rural superintendent that was listening to us have this conversation, and they're considering building some kind of a career pathway program or initiative, what would you encourage them to start thinking about? I know that it needs to be systematic.
Yeah.
In order to build something sustainable. Even when you have limited staff, you can still start somewhere. What would you encourage them to do first?
Well, I think it's because of my approach to things. I think the very first step is asset mapping. So looking at your school, your teachers, your community, your students, your parents, your industry, and map it out and get really clear pictures of who is there, what do they offer, what do you offer, are you in communication, do you have collaboration already occurring, where have you been successful, where has it failed? Like, do not be afraid of staring failure in the face and addressing it and trying to fix it. Like a lot of that's common. People are like, well, let's not do that again. That didn't work. Okay, it didn't work, but there's a really good opportunity. Let's investigate what happened. And so I think, asset mapping, and then I think what that leads to is just, a mixture of strategic planning and strategic doing. I just recently had a really wonderful conversation with one of the board members from the Cochise Technology District, and their superintendent and their 2 outreach people. And it was about like, what is the Cochise Technology District doing right now? What are some of the programs? And when they shared out what they were doing, I knew some of them, but I didn't know most of them. And they're new. The board members knew. He didn't either. And so just for us to hear about, where they're working and what kind of programs are going on, and it's across the entire county, all the way from, Bowie and San Simon to Douglas and Bisbee. I mean, there are programs in aviation, avionics, welding, dual credit programs where students are going to Cochise College on a Friday. They have college IDs. They're getting college credit. So that conversation was important. Did we make any decisions that day? Did we start a strategic plan? No, but it was that opportunity to unveil the assets that are occurring. And then for that board member who happens to be on a kind of a workforce development and housing development program in Sierra Vista, he immediately was like, oh my gosh, there's so many assets that I could bring to the technology district, funding, grants. And so it's those kind of conversations I think that are important, connection, collaboration, communication, coordination that leads to these sometimes very unexpected, but very powerful outcomes.
Boy, no kidding. Sepp, you've worked at the intersection of data and community health and education. And can you talk a little bit about how you see all those threads coming together to really create a more equitable future for rural learners, especially in Southern Arizona? But really, this is a model that others could replicate.
Yeah, that is what keeps me up at night. And I don't know if I have an answer or the answer. I think the answer is collaboration and conversation with community partners. One thing that's been on my mind, and I've had some conversations with folks about it, it's not my idea, is especially for rural communities, really accessible, forward-facing live dashboards that could be used immediately by parents, teachers, students, school administrators, industry partners. There are pieces of it and the Arizona Progress Meters and through CFA and the Helios Foundation and other spots around the state. But I think they lose a little clarity when they're at kind of the state level. Sure. Whereas if they could be honed down to a county and then even to a zip code, and a student or a parent could just pull it up and see these are the future jobs that are coming. These are the courses available in my area as a high school student. This is what's available in my community college. I mean, Pipeline AZ and My Future AZ does really important work around this. But I think that would be very helpful as long as everybody has access to it.
Right.
And so backstory to that forward-facing, fully updated, functioning dashboard is rural broadband. And that's an area that I get to work on and collaborate on, and is essential. Whether it's farming or welding or cybersecurity, we really do need a rural broadband infrastructure that helps all people have access to high-speed internet. We're in an era now that you cannot not have that. Whether it's doing your own career exploration or working remotely in banking or cyber or other, or farming for that matter. I think of, drones and satellites that help, plant crops here. So those are a couple of things that are kind of, I wake up at 2 a.m. Oh, maybe if we could just get this person talking.
I'm so glad that you brought up broadband, because it is still an issue. And I don't think that people realize how many rural communities are still not connected.
Yes. Yeah. One organization, I think you probably have come across them. It's written as AZ-1 and it's pronounced as one. They're doing some really great work in mapping broadband and getting internet access to rural communities. And I think another part that they do that's really important is sharing stories that are happening because of broadband access.
Yeah.
Stories that couldn't have happened 5 years ago or 6 years ago, that are really dependent on internet access. So that organization has been really, really great to work with. Another one, and I, again, just a shout out to them because they're an essential community partner, is an organization called IDIA, and they just opened what's called a Hive in Sierra Vista, and it's a place where students, adults, community members can go. There's full-blown free Wi-Fi, there's computers, but there's also VR headsets, podcasting stations, and a person to help you if you've never done it before.
Nice.
Any of those things. And they also support people, doing job searches and developing resumes. Dr. Aaron Carr Jordan is the one that I got to meet a few years ago that brought this into my reality. And now they're here in Cochise County and operating and collaborating closely with, Arizona at Work and AREDF and Sierra Vista and even with Peak, professionals and educators across Cochise. So those kind of things coming here make access accessible.
Yeah. Yep. I'm glad that you were able to plug those. So if you're in Cochise County, you might want to check those out if you're not familiar with them.
Yeah.
So Sepp, most of your work, I would say most, it could be just much, but most of your work really is around helping rural schools and communities move from isolation to connection. And can you talk to us a little bit about what gives you hope about where we're headed, especially in rural places like Southeast Arizona?
Well, luckily, the work that I do, it gives me hope because it constantly puts me in touch with rural community members. And each week, each month, there's some new event or, policy meeting or opportunity to connect with the school. And then I get to see firsthand those students, those teachers, those school administrators. But because of the situation I'm in, it's not just K-12 education. I just, I don't know, 24 hours ago was working on a grant with Benson Hospital and a local farmer, Joe Marlowe of Southwind Farms, to bring a grant to Benson so that the senior citizen lunch program that we do here with the hospital and the city, every Friday, those seniors could get a share of locally grown fresh produce. And it won't be the first time. Like we were involved in a project like this last year, and we were able to distribute produce to hospital workers and education workers at Benson Unified School District. And it's not theoretical. Like I got to see hand deliver produce and see people pick it up. And I thought, oh, great, it's a nutrition program or a food as medicine program or somewhat economic development program for local farmers. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, what it was very clear to me, it was social connection program. People started talking about food, about recipes, about their lives, about their jobs, about their children. And where in the first weeks and months when we did that, it was a 5-minute pickup drop off. After the year went by, it took hours to get the vegetables distributed. And it was great because people stayed to talk and learn about each other. And I would go home on cloud nine feeling like there is absolute hope in the world, because when people get to see each other eye to eye and interact and have something in common, a lot of the kind of the national news vibe disappears. And you're like, oh, wait a second, we're all here together.
Yeah.
This is how the world works in real life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Sepp, I always close with this, and you started answering it a little bit, but I want to ask you, what does the term rural advantage mean to you?
So I made a little response in the email you sent me earlier today. I think what comes to mind is this idea of frugal innovation. Also, it's called 𝐄𝐩𝐢𝐬𝐬, and it's this ability to make something when you have nothing. That some folks might feel like there's nowhere for me to go. I don't know what to do. I'm at a dead end. And in rural communities, it's not across the board. It's not all the time. It ends up being, how do I cross this barrier without having the tools that I need? And so often it's, I'm going to turn to a neighbor, I'm going to turn to a friend, to my parent, to my teacher, to my superintendent, and say, hey, look, I'm stuck here. How do I figure this out? And I could give so many examples, of real life examples. I just want to share one of the rural advantage, and that what happens to people is, and this is a little braggy because it's my daughter. When she was a senior in high school, she was doing every science fair in the state. And she was starting to do very advanced chemistry and developing crystals, and how crystals grow. And she needed materials that were illegal to send through the mail, chemical materials. And she also needed a lab that our high school didn't have. And pretty much with a little bit of help from us, a little bit of help from her high school teacher, she was able to connect with Cochise College and get them to order the materials for her and use their lab. And she went on, to win, the Yes Fair and SARSEF, and went on to do ISEF and the Arizona Science Fair. And she had to figure it out. Like we were helping as much as we could, but she was the one like, I've got to figure out how to do this. And through conversation and collaboration and some grit, we started finding the community members that could help. And she was able to conduct and complete those experiments.
That's fantastic. I think a little bit of braggy is just fine. Well, Sepp, I want to thank you for joining me on the Rural Scoop today and for helping us really think differently about what it means to prepare rural students for their future. And it's not just the next step after graduation, but it really is making sure that their lives are ready to be full and purposeful and attached to possibility. So thanks for being here with me today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all you do and for elevating and highlighting rural Arizona and what it's like to live here and function here and succeed here and struggle from time to time. I appreciate all that you guys do to highlight and elevate that in Arizona. Well,
thank you for that. And friends, what I'm taking away from this conversation is that career pathways are not just about workforce pipelines or economic growth. They're really about dignity and belonging and making sure that we're giving students the tools to see themselves in the future of their community, which that's something that rural places have always done well. We invest in our people and we grow our own and we build from our strengths. And the work that Sepp and the Center for the Future of Arizona are leading really reminds us that alignment doesn't happen by accident. It really happens through intention when schools and colleges and communities really choose to set themselves up in the same story. So for those of you that are listening today, I hope this episode sparks some ideas about what that alignment might look like in your area. Maybe it's starting a conversation with your local community college, or maybe it's talking to a business owner and inviting them in to talk to students about their career path. Or maybe it's just simply helping a student dream a little bit bigger than what they thought was possible. So if you found this conversation valuable, I hope that you'll take a moment to like and follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and share this episode with another rural educator or partner or a policymaker who believes, like we do, that rural schools are the key to finding and building a stronger future for all of us. So remember, the rural advantage is not just a tagline, it's a truth that we live every day. And our connectedness and our creativity and our care for one another are what really make our communities a place not only to survive, but to thrive. So I'm Melissa Sadorf, and this is The Rural Scoop, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for tuning in to The Rural Scoop. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep these important rural conversations going. And we'd love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment or share your thoughts. You can follow along and never miss a new release by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform or by following us on social. We're on YouTube at The Rural Scoop, Instagram at 𝐿sadorf1, and X at 𝐿sadorf03. The Rural Scoop is produced with support from 𝐓𝐢𝐬𝐻 Educational Consultants. To learn more, visit 𝐓𝐢𝐬consultants.com. See you next time for more great discussions about rural education. And as always, keep leaning in to the rural advantage.